Let me tell you something that most gun owners in this country don't know. And the ones who do find out usually find out the hard way. You could be in violation of federal law right now. Not because you did something reckless, not because you have a criminal record, not because you bought a weapon illegally, but because of how the law is written, how it's being interpreted, and how the latest wave of gun legislation is closing gaps that gun owners didn't even know existed. And the new law, it doesn't fix that problem. It makes it worse. I'm going to break down exactly what's happening, who's at risk, what most people completely misread about this, and what you need to know before you find yourself on the wrong side of a federal charge you never saw coming. Stay with me, this is important. I've spent years inside the legal side of Second Amendment issues, studying how these laws are written, how prosecutors use them, and how good law-abiding gun owners end up in serious trouble through misunderstanding, not malice. I'm not here to scare you for clicks. I'm here because this stuff is real, it's moving fast right now, and the people most at risk are the ones who think they're doing everything right. Here's what's happening at the federal level right now. Congress has passed, or is actively advancing, legislation that expands the definition of prohibited persons, tightens the rules around firearm storage and transfer, and in some versions creates new paperwork requirements that attach criminal liability when people don't follow them to the letter. And here's the part that should get your attention immediately. These aren't changes that require criminal intent to trigger. Under several provisions currently on the table or recently enacted, the violation can be what's called a strict liability structure, meaning you don't have to know you broke the law, you just have to have broken it. That's not a legal footnote. That's the machinery that turns responsible gun owners into federal defendants. What happened? Over the past several years, and accelerating recently, we've seen a sustained effort at the federal and state level to redefine what makes someone a prohibited person under the law, expand what counts as an unlawful transfer, and create new categories of regulatory compliance that carry criminal teeth. The language is always careful. The headlines always sound reasonable. Closing loopholes, common sense measures, protecting communities. But here's what that language often does in practice. It creates gray zones. And gray zones under federal law are dangerous territory. Most gun owners operate under a clear mental model. They passed a background check, they bought from a licensed dealer, they follow the rules in their state, they believe they're covered. That model is increasingly outdated. Here's the first thing I need you to understand. The definition of who cannot legally possess a firearm has been expanding, quietly through regulatory interpretation and now through legislation. We're not just talking about felons and domestic violence convictions anymore. We're talking about mental health adjudications, certain misdemeanor charges in states with varying standards, specific civil protection orders, and in some newer proposals, cannabis use in states where it's legal, which is still a federal prohibition trigger. You could be living entirely within your state's laws and still be federally prohibited from possessing a firearm. That gap exists. It has real victims. People think the law operates the way it sounds when it passes. It doesn't. It operates the way the agency enforces it and the way a prosecutor chooses to use it. Let me give you a clear example. The rules around private transfers, selling a gun to a neighbor, passing one down to a family member, have been dramatically tightened in recent years and are being tightened further. The ATF's rule on what constitutes being in the business of dealing firearms has been expanded. What used to be a clear exception for private sales in many contexts now requires a much closer read. If you sold 3 firearms last year and didn't go through an FFL, a licensed dealer, for those transfers, you may be in violation of current federal interpretation. Not because you're a gun trafficker, because the line moved. And here's the catch that most people miss entirely. Ignorance of where that line moved is not a defense. The legislation that's moving, and in some forms has already moved, doesn't just add rules. It adds reporting obligations, storage mandates with criminal liability attached, and new definitions that broaden ATF jurisdiction over situations that were previously considered private. Some of this is still being litigated. Some of it has already cleared court challenges. The landscape is not stable. That's the key phrase here. The landscape is not stable. This matters because your compliance strategy from 5 years ago, 3 years ago, even last year, may not reflect your current legal exposure. The law changed. Your habits may not have. First, audit your current situation against recent federal changes. I'm not talking about a casual read of a gun forum. I mean an honest accounting of your firearms, how you acquired them, how they're stored, whether you've made any transfers in the past few years, and whether any civil, criminal, or medical history might affect your status under expanded prohibited person definitions. Second, if you have any doubt about your status, talk to a firearms attorney before you take any action, not after. The act of continuing to possess while prohibited, even if you just found out, can become a separate criminal act. Third, understand your state's interaction with federal law. Some states create additional obligations, some states offer protections, but state law never overrides federal prohibition. Ever. That hierarchy is fixed. Fourth, be extremely cautious about any transfer, sale, gift, loan, until you understand where the in the business line now sits under current ATF interpretation. What felt like a gray zone 2 years ago may now be clearly on the wrong side. Here's what I want you to hold on to, because this shifts how you need to think about all of this. Gun ownership in America has traditionally been framed as a rights issue. You have the right, you exercise it, you're protected. That framing is still legally accurate in many respects, but it misses something critical. Rights and legal exposure are not the same thing. You can have the right to own a firearm and still be criminally prosecuted for how you own it, store it, transfer it, or carry it. The Second Amendment does not immunize you from regulatory criminal liability. Those are parallel tracks. And the track of criminal liability just got more lanes added to it. The people who understand that distinction are the ones who stay out of federal court. The people who don't are the ones who call a lawyer after the fact, from a very difficult position. Let me pull this together before we close. 1. Expanded definitions of prohibited persons mean you need to verify your legal status, not assume it. 2. The in the business interpretation has moved, and private transfers carry more risk than most people think. 3. New storage and transfer mandates carry criminal liability that doesn't require criminal intent. 4. Your rights and your legal exposure are separate issues. Both matter. 5. The legal landscape is not stable, which means your compliance posture needs to be actively maintained, not set it and forget it. Here's what I want you to take away from this. The people who get hurt by these laws are not usually the people the laws were written to target. They're the responsible gun owners who trusted that their old understanding of the rules was still good. It may not be. The government does not owe you a notification when the rules change. The law presumes you know it. And when there's a gap between what you know and what the law now says, that gap has your name on it. That's not a reason to panic. It's a reason to be precise. Know your status. Know your obligations. Know where the lines are today, not where they were. Precision is protection. Assumption is exposure. If this channel does one thing, it's this. It closes the gap between what gun owners assume and what the law actually requires. Because that gap is where lives get disrupted, rights get lost, and good people end up in places they never expected to be. If you're not subscribed, do it now. We cover these legal changes as they happen. Not weeks later, not summarized down to uselessness, but in real language with real implications for people who own firearms and intend to keep that right intact. And I'll leave you with this. The law does not reward good intentions. It rewards preparation. Stay prepared.